Governor Haley, American students, they are in academic trouble. They have lower scores in math and reading. There's chronic absenteeism. That's at record highs. And this has even been called education homicide. You say school choice is the answer, but South Carolina, your home state, still has not enacted universal school choice, and even the current expansion won't be fully implemented until 2027. Parents can't wait 4 years for a fix. So what would you do right now?
Well, and school choice isn't the only answer, but I'll tell you it's not out of a lack of trying that we didn't try and get school choice in South Carolina. What I'll tell you, first of all, is we have to acknowledge the fact that 67% of our 8th graders are not proficient in reading or math. Over 80% of our 8th graders aren't proficient in history or civics. And recently they came out and said our 12 and 13-year-olds are scoring at the lowest levels they've been scoring in reading and math in decades. So the first thing we've got to do is we've got to make sure we catch our kids back up. We have to make sure they can read. A child that can't read by 3rd grade is 4 times less likely to graduate high school. We need to do reading remediation. We need complete transparency in the classroom. No parent should ever wonder what's being said or taught to their child in the classroom. We need to make sure that we have school choice so that there's competition. We need to move all the programs from the federal government down to the states and let states decide what education looks like in their states.
States' rights, which means cut public education and make for-profit schools the norm.
Classes back in our high schools, and let's get our kids building the things that we know that we can make. When we start to focus on that and really bring in that parental involvement, that's when we'll start to see a difference. But we've got to get parents back included. We've got to quit spending time on this DEI and CRT and instead focus on financial literacy, on digital literacy.
They're acting like people are actually like teaching that, and that's like a big focus. It's not.
The next generation.
On the subject of education,
it's not, but okay.
A question for Governor Christie. Students in your state are getting high marks on their report cards, but minorities are not doing well with math and reading. Black and Hispanic students averaging 29 points lower than white students in New Jersey. Would you address minorities first?
You have to address all students. And look,
that
in
wasn't
our state,
the question.
Stuart, frankly, before I was governor, that gap was close to 50%. And what we did was institute more charter schools and more Renaissance schools and more public school choice in New Jersey.
Oh, I just hate that school choice. It's such a fucking bullshit euphemism.
We took what was the worst school district in America during my time, and we have now increased that by nearly 40% in terms of their proficiency. It can be done when you give people choice. But let's tell the truth to everybody about what this is. This public school system is no longer run by the public. It is run by the teachers' unions in this country. Randy Weingarten and her crew are absolutely strangling. They are taking the worst of their members and defending them rather than advocating for our kids. And when you have
they think the problem is
the
teachers'
sleeping
union
with a member of the teachers' union, there is no chance that you could take the stranglehold away from the teachers' union every day.
Sleeping with a member of the teachers' union, that sounds very awkward. But also, they try to blame everything on unions because they just hate workers having any type of power.
They have an advocate inside the White House every day for the worst of their teachers, not for our students to be the best they can be. A president of the United States has to take on the teachers union. I did it in New Jersey, and I will do it as president of the United States.
Union busting, it's so embarrassing.
Governor DeSantis, I have a question for you. Governor DeSantis, I have a question for you. Florida's new Black History curriculum says, quote, slaves develop skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. You have said slaves develop skills in spite of slavery, not because of it. But many are still hurt. For descendants of slaves, this is personal. What is your message to them?
So first of all, that's a hoax that was perpetrated by Kamala Harris. We are not going to be doing that. Second of all, that was written by descendants of slaves. These are great Black history scholars, so we need to stop playing these games. Here's the deal. Our country's education system is in decline because it's focused on indoctrination, denying parents' rights. Florida represents the revival of American education. We're ranked #1 in the nation in education by U.S. News and World Report. My wife and I, we have a 6, 5, and 3-year-old. This is personal to us. We didn't just talk about universal school choice. We enacted universal school choice. We didn't just talk about Parents' Bill of Rights. We enacted the Parents' Bill of Rights. We eliminated critical race theory, and we now have American civics and and the Constitution in our schools in a really big way, just like President Reagan asked for in his farewell address back in 1989. Florida is showing how it's done. We're standing with parents, and our kids are benefiting.
Senator Scott, you oppose to these new standards. What is your message for Governor DeSantis?
There is not a redeeming quality in slavery. He and Kamala should have just taken the one sentence out. America has suffered because of slavery, but we've overcome that. We are the greatest nation on earth because we faced our demons in the mirror and made a decision. So often we think that all the issues, you talked about crime and education and healthcare, we always think that those issues go back to slavery. Here's the challenge though.
Well, a lot of them
Black
do.
families survived slavery. We survived poll taxes and literacy tests. We survived discrimination being woven into the laws of our country. What was hard to survive was Johnson's Great Society, where they decided...
That's insane. That's insane. First of all, surviving is not enough. Like, just being like, oh, well, they survived. Well, shouldn't they be thriving? And that is insane to say that Johnson's Great Society was worse than slavery. Okay.
to put money where they decided to take the black father out of the household to get a check in the mail, and you can now measure that in unemployment, in crime, in devastation.
That's literally made up. That's
hope,
not how it happened.
Restore the family, restore capitalism, and put
Restore capitalism
together.
That is ridiculous. Put Americans back at work as if they're not already working. Americans work harder than fucking so many people around the world, okay? Americans are always working. Number one. Number two, put people back to work. Number three, put the fathers back in the household. Like, his insinuation is that, like, women are purposefully not marrying so that they can get welfare checks. Like, the fuck?
As one American family, our nation continues to go in the right direction. It's why I can say I have been discriminated against, but America is not a racist country. Never, ever doubt who we are. We are the greatest country on God's green earth. And frankly, the city on the hill needs a brand new leader. And I'm asking for your vote.
I'm going to have a question for
That was
you,
his closing
Mr.
speech,
Ramaswamy.
even though it's not over, and
Over
that's not what they were
10.7
asking, but
million
okay.
students in over 18,000 public schools nationwide have the ability to change their identity without parental notification. Governor Christie told Stewart last week that he would pass a federal law to protect parental rights. Would you try to do the same?
I have to be very clear about this. Transgenderism, especially in kids, is a mental health disorder. We have to acknowledge the truth of that for what it is. I met two young women early in this campaign.
Specifically on parental rights in schools.
Parents have the right to know. And you know what the hypocrisy of this is? Even New Hampshire failed to actually get past a piece.
A lot of parents do know, and they support the kids, and you still want to ban it. That's authoritarian. What happened to parents' rights?
Legislation here. The very people who say that this increases the risk of suicide are also the ones saying that parents don't have the right to know about that increased risk of suicide. And
That's
I'm
not
sorry,
what they're
it is
saying.
not
Always
compassionate
misrepresenting the
to
truth.
affirm a kid's confusion. That is not compassion, that is cruelty. I met two young women, Chloe and Katie, early
Another
in this
anecdote.
campaign, who are in their 20s, now regret getting double mastectomies and a hysterectomy. One of them will never have children. And the fact that we...
More fear-mongering. You have to go through screenings in order to get that done. And most people who get trans-affirming care do not regret it. And again, if this is all about parental rights, we have to listen to parents, blah, 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 blah. Well, a lot of parents support their children's transition, so stay the fuck out of it.
Allowed that to happen in this country is barbaric. So I will ban genital mutilation or chemical castration
but I want to know,
under the age of 18, and
specifically
parents have absolutely
Would you
the
try
right.
to pass a federal law that says parents should have that
What
right?
happened?
We are going to require states absolutely have to
Then I
follow
wanna
that through.
What happened to
Just
states'
follow up
rights?
on this,
Parental rights,
because
yes.
you-
See, it's always, there's no fucking consistency. It's always, stop making the federal government so big, states' rights, parents' rights, but then when it's something that they want to do, all of a sudden it's a federal issue. So children being able to go to school, that's a state's issue. Parents and children deciding with their doctors what type of care they want, now that's a federal issue. Abortion, now it's going to be a federal issue again.
In your state, you do not have a law that says parents can't be notified, but you want to be president. Would you try to pass a federal law to say parents have that right?
I think this is a state's issue, but
why are you being asked questions? I don't understand why Bert is even here.
About how it's broken in Washington, and I respect all of the people on the stage here for their 100+ years of public service. Thank you. But the reason why we're not talking about education or healthcare or safety being a problem in North Dakota is because we have a business leader. I've got more experience as a business leader than I think this whole group combined. I know I've created more jobs than everybody else on stage, thousands of high-paying jobs that have real meaning. So as a business leader,
you haven't created jobs, but okay.
Customer. So in North Dakota, instead of fighting with the teachers' unions, we actually created a
What is the
K-12 coordinating council.
population?
Everybody gets in the room, and the customer is the student.
But you do understand that this is an issue that many people in America really are concerned about, worried about parents and notification in schools.
Yes, and that's why we have 50 platforms of innovation. That's why we have
it's not even a million. It's not even a million, and that, yet this guy wants to think
that needs to be assembled. We got to move it back to states.
That he's the answer. That we should listen to him because his state has 1 million people in it. New York has like close to 30 million. Like, get the fuck out of here. Jeez, how many does California has? Like 40 million.
And the things that help teach the values that we're trying to get, like 4-H, like FFA, like Boy Scouts, they can get credit for all of that stuff. And by the way, North Dakota is now at the top of the median SAT scores in the country right now.
Vice President Pence, the Department of Homeland Security warns that violence against LGBTQ+ people is on the rise and intensifying. According to a recent study, members of that community are 9 times more likely to be victims of violent hate crimes. As president, how would you protect this community from violent attacks and discrimination?
Well, as President of the United States, I'll stand up for the safety and the civil liberties of every American.
No, you won't. You ban trans people from the military.
And I want the American people to know that. But I want to answer the question as well, Dana, that you just asked Doug Burke. Because by way of full disclosure, Chris, you mentioned the president's situation.
Is his name really Bert? I was calling him Bert because like Ernie and Bert.
Isn't a member of the teachers union, but I got to admit,
oh wait, no, it's Doug.
I've been sleeping with a teacher for 38 years, and so full disclosure. Look, education is a state.
It's so awkward.
The state of Indiana had one of the very first school choice programs in the country, and when I was governor of the state of Indiana, we doubled it. And as to your question, Dana, let's be very, very clear. When the Linn-Mar Community Schools in Iowa had a policy where you had to have a permission slip from your parents to get a Tylenol, but you could get a gender transition plan without notifying your parents.
That's
I
not
weighed
true.
in with the foundation. That's not bad policy. That's crazy. We're going to stand up for the rights of parents, and we're going to pass a federal ban on transgender chemical or surgical surgery anywhere in the country. We've got to protect
what happened to states'
kids
rights
from this radical gender ideology.
What happened to states'
agenda.
rights? I ask
again. We've got to
again.
empower parents at the state level with the ability to choose where their kids go to school, whether it's public, private, parochial, or homeschool. You empower parents, and our schools will straighten up and reflect our values and focus.
See how it makes no sense? There's no like coherent through line. In the same fucking breath, he's talking about states' rights and parents' rights to make decisions for their children when it comes to education. But when they want to make a decision about their children's health care, all of a sudden that needs to be a federal issue.
The basics faster than you could possibly imagine.
Next subject.
Can I just say one thing?
China is investing. If you talk
Cut their
money,
mics.
we lose time. China is investing heavily in their tech companies. $280 billion every year on semiconductor research and development. That is 1 CHIPS Act per year. Governor DeSantis, you say companies like Google and Meta have too much power. Doesn't going after them give China an edge?
No, I think you look at how our society's developed.
Yeah, that's
they
a very
have huge
right-wing
amount of
framed
power
question.
over our society. They've cracked down on free speech. We're not saying you don't want them to do business, but you want it to be a free market. And right now they're monopolies. But this issue of
You
China,
guys love
I think, is really going to be
monopolies.
fundamental. We have
All they do is talk. All they do is talk. They love monopolies. They don't give a fuck about monopolies. You know who's cracking down on monopolies? Lena Khan in the Biden administration.
Out so much of our national needs to the CCP. We rely on them for a whole host of issues. We need to reshore and we need to decouple all those important industries. We need to get that back in the United States. They are our top geopolitical adversary by a country mile. Xi Jinping's got huge ambitions, not only in the Asia Pacific, but as you mentioned earlier, in our region. But ultimately, we've got to beat him on the economy. And so that's what we'll do as President of the United States.
Governor Christie, I wanted to follow up on this because 22% of American
I don't
workers
even know why I
fear
said
their
no shit. I
jobs
wasn't
will be
paying attention
lost
there to
to
what
a
he was
robot.
babbling about.
And you said in the past that the free market is the way to go. Would you retrain workers who lose a job to artificial intelligence, and to do what?
Well, look, what I think artificial intelligence offers us is an extraordinary opportunity
Well, look, they can just
to
go fuck
expand well
themselves.
beyond the productivity that we have now, and to have Americans be able to be involved in that revolution, Dana. You know, each time we have shown incredible innovation and progress in this country. What we've done with it is to expand all kinds of new, even unthought of opportunities for folks. Yes, we have to do retraining for folks who lose some of their jobs, and we should be doing that. And we should have more training available both at the county college level and the local level for people to be able to access it. So yes, I would be in favor of that. But this is a much bigger issue than that. We can't be afraid of innovation. America has been the great innovator of this world over the last 200 years.
We can't be afraid of innovation, but we're going to continue to try to stop the innovation of electric cars. Okay.
Years, a technological innovator, a manufacturing innovator, and a freedom and governmental innovator.
Lol.
And that's why America has to continue to stand strong in the world.
They just say the same shit over and over and over again.
And I will tell you this.
With no meaning.
As President of the United States, what I will do is to make sure that every innovator in this country gets the government the hell off its back and out of its pocket so that it can innovate and bring great new inventions to our country that will make everybody's lives better.
Can you guys not say the same thing over and over and over again? It's always the same fucking thing.
On government-issued devices because of its ties to the Chinese government. Yet you joined TikTok after dinner with boxer and influencer Jake Paul. Should the commander-in-chief be so easily persuaded by an influencer?
So the answer is I have a radical idea for the Republican Party. We need to win elections. And part of how we win elections is reaching the next
Even though you
generation
said it should
of
get
young
banned,
Americans
but okay.
where they are.
That
So
was
when I
the
get into
point.
office, I've been very clear. Kids under the age of 16 should not be using addictive social media. We're only going to ever get to declaring independence from China, which I favor, if we actually win. So while the Democrats are running rampant, reaching the next generation 3-1, there's exactly one person in the Republican Party which talks a big game about reaching young people, and that's me. And let me level with all of you.
Talks
I'm the
a
new
big
guy
game.
here,
Talks
and so
being
I
the
know
operative word
I have
there.
to earn your trust. What do you see? You see a young man who's in a bit of a hurry, maybe a little ambitious, bit of a know-it-all, it seems at times. I'm here to tell you, no, I don't know it all.
I'm here. You see a young man with a funny name. Oh, wait, I already copied that line from Obama. Well, I might be a little ambitious. Okay, but he's so unbearable. So unbearable.
Listen, I will have the best people, the best and brightest in this country, whatever age they are, advising me. We will be probably many of the people on this stage included. That's how I built my companies.
Trying to be all like kiss ass now and
That's
conciliatory.
what makes America great, because we're not a perfect nation. We're founded on the pursuit of perfection. That is what makes America great. And that is why we will end it once we win this election.
I have to jump.
You're not going to win the election.
I'm sorry. There's one person on this.
This is infuriating because TikTok is one of the most dangerous.
I'm glad
social
she
media
cut off
apps that we could have.
Ernie and Bert
and
guy.
what you've got, I honestly, every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say because I can't believe
that was
here
funny.
We've got a TikTok situation. What they're doing is these 150
she really hates
million
him. So does
people
Mike
on
Pence,
TikTok.
which is kind of
That
funny.
means they can get your
It's
contacts,
easy.
they
He
can
has a
get your
punchable
financial
face.
information, they
He's
can
very
get your
hateable.
emails, they can
Let me
get
just say,
text messages, they can get all of
this
these
is important.
things.
This is
China
very important
knows
for our party.
exactly what they're
This
doing.
is very important for our party, and I'm going to say
You've gone and you've helped
should
China
stop.
make medicines in China.
I do like that she's
America.
not allowing
You're
him to
now
cut her
wanting
off.
kids to go and get on the social media that's dangerous for all of us. You went and you were in business with the Chinese that gave Hunter Biden $5 million. We can't trust you. We can't trust you. We can't have TikTok in our
think that this is very important.
I mean, true. Fact check true. He's not trustworthy.
Excuse me.
You have 15 seconds, Mr. Rameshwari.
Thank you. I think we would be better served as a Republican Party if we're not sitting here hurling personal insults.
Oh,
and
now
actually
you
have a
care about
legitimate
personal
debate about
insults.
policy, following Reagan's 11th Commandment in his honor. And the answer is that is what actually makes our country strong. And I believe in these people. These are good people on the stage. They disagree, but let's have a legitimate disagreement. That's what I would say.
Lol.
Stuart, can we get back to the question?
No,
The question
we
is
cannot.
on
Governor
technology.
DeSantis,
There's
I'm
one
going
person
straight.
on this stage
Sir,
that has a
we
career in
will have to
technology.
cut your mic, and I don't want to do that. I don't. So, Governor DeSantis, let me go to you. Experts
Oh,
say
I'm glad
President Putin
someone
has ordered
finally said that.
assassinations
It's like, shut the
across
fuck
Europe,
up.
cheated on arms control treaties with the U.S., and seeks to work with China to force our decline. President Reagan believed that if you want to prevent a war, you better be prepared to fight one. Today, the Republican Party is at odds over aid to Ukraine. The price tag so far is $76 billion. But is it in our best interest to degrade Russia's military for less than 5% of what we pay annually
And then he
on
doesn't
defense,
answer it.
especially when there are no U.S. soldiers in the fight?
It's in our interest to end this war, and that's what I will do as president.
That doesn't
We are
answer the
not going to have a
question. Of
blank
course,
check.
everybody
We will
wants
not
to
have US
end the
troops,
war.
and we're going to make the Europeans do what they need to do. But they've sent money to pay bureaucrats' pensions and salaries and funding small businesses halfway around the world. Meanwhile, our own country is being invaded. We don't even have control of our own territory. We have got to defend the American people before we even worry about all these other things. And I watch these guys in Washington, D.C.
Did I miss anything?
The reality
Probably
is just
not,
because,
right?
just because Putin is not Putin's an evil dictator does not mean that Ukraine is good. This is a country that has banned 11 opposition parties.
A win
that has
for
actually,
Russia is a
that
win
is not
for
true.
China.
Yeah, this isn't about whether or not Ukraine has
Excuse
bad
me, if you
people in
have a
it.
chance-
You like
you'll
China.
have-
That's
no,
why you're
you'll
okay
have
with
you'll have your chance in just a moment.
Yeah.
The hurling personal insults isn't helping. China is the real enemy, and we're driving Russia further into China's arms. We need a reasonable peace plan to end this, especially this is a country whose president just last week
Vivek,
was
if you
hailing a
let
Nazi in
Putin
his own
have
ranks.
Ukraine, that's a green light to China to take Taiwan.
We need a
Peace
reasonable
comes
plan
through
to
strength.
We need a reasonable plan to peace.
Governor Christie.
The Communist Party of China is the real enemy.
Governor Christie. Governor Christie. President Biden's first 2 years have brought China, Russia, and Iran closer together. Are we focused too much
I
on
hate the way they
Ukraine
talk
and
about
not
foreign
enough on this
policy.
threat from the new world order?
No, they're all connected, Stuart.
Yeah,
They're all
obviously,
connected.
and the people that are making
The
it worse
Chinese
is
are
you.
paying for the Russian war in Ukraine. The Iranians are supplying more sophisticated weapons, and so are the North Koreans now as well, with the encouragement of the Chinese.
Why you
the
gotta
naivete
lie?
on this stage from some of these folks is extraordinary. Look, I understand people want to go and talk to Putin. Guess what? So did George W. Bush. So did Barack Obama.
So what's
So
your
did Donald
solution?
And so did Joe Biden when he said a small invasion wouldn't be so bad. Every one of them has been wrong. And the fact of the matter is, we need to say right now that the Chinese-Russian alliance is something we have to fight against, and we are not going to solve it by going over and cuddling up to Vladimir Putin. Look, Donald Trump said Vladimir Putin was brilliant and a great leader. This is the person who is murdering people in his own country, and now not having enough blood, he's now going to Ukraine to murder innocent civilians and kidnap 20,000 children. And let me tell you, if you think that's where it's going to stop, if we give him
obviously
Ukraine,
not. The people that are like,
this is a guy who said,
some of these people just straight up take Putin's side.
Said that was the darkest moment in world history when the Soviet Union fell. Listen, everybody, he wants to put the old band back together, and only America can stop it. Right. And when I'm president, we will.
That is kind of funny. I love him. I love that phrase, put the old band back together.
Really like, or at least you have experience in it. And we need to talk about America's farmers, because there is a foreign
she's having
to
treat him with kid gloves.
She's like, economic competition.
She's like, please, okay, guy who won't shut the fuck up this entire time that no one realizes why you're here. I have a question for you. Can you calm down now?
It's hurting American businesses, and there is blowback against American farmers because China then targets them in retaliation. How would you, as president, protect American farmers and ranchers from that kind of retaliation from a foreign government like China?
Well, first of all, we've got the best farmers and ranchers in the world right here in America. If they have a level playing field, they can
Why do you
outcompete
treat them
anyone
like
in the world.
shit,
But this is part of the larger issue that we're talking about
here. They treat farmers like shit.
We're in a Cold War with China. The Biden administration won't admit that. But we're also in a economic war through what we're doing with agriculture and energy. And we're also in a war with them relative to cyber war. We get attacked every day in North Dakota, every state, every school district, our tribes, all being attacked every day by either China, Russia, Iran, or North Korea. And now we've got a Biden administration whose whole policy is appeasement. They're out there, creating the world, making it less safe. $6 billion they traded.
They
for
just say
people.
that
They
about
just now
every
set a price
Democrat.
on anyone's head who's a tourist from America, who's a student from America, for kidnapping.
They're just trying to appease. If you don't want to go to constant war, they call you an appeaser.
And they're also helping Iran get to have more closer to nuclear weapons.
No, they're not actually. No, they're not actually. Iran was following the rules of that deal. You bitches are the ones that went into office and tore it up, making the whole world less safe.
And then, of course, we're going to give Ukraine to Russia, and then we're going to give Taiwan to China, and think that's a foreign policy. That will make our nation less successful.
Biden never said he wouldn't stand up for Taiwan. In fact, he said the opposite.
Because China imports 10 million barrels of oil a day. They're the largest import in the world, and we've had 4 cabinet members from the Biden administration there this summer, and none of them talked about U.S. energy. The first one to go to each of those countries was Kerry, to talk about the folly of the climate policy, which is making the world less stable. It's empowering dictators. It's not about climate change that we need worried about. It's
why
about
do you guys hate innovation?
That are actually the existential threat to America's
future.
Because
climate policies are a result of innovation, actually.
Mexico's president called who supports sending U.S. military into the country, quote, scoundrels.
True.
Mexico is the United States' most important trade partner and border security. You say you will send special operations to attack the cartels in Mexico. So, this means boots on the ground, drone strikes?
This is insane.
It means special operations. It's how we deal with our terrorists. And what you need to do is understand that Mexico's not being a good partner if we lost 75,000
That's a great way to talk about your trading partner, by calling them terrorists.
If they're letting the cartels get away with what they're getting away with.
So fucking
what we will do
stupid.
is we will make sure that we send in our special operations, and we will take out the cartels, we'll take out their operations, we'll take out anything that's doing it. But we're going to go after China, because China is the one sending the fentanyl in the first place. And we will end all normal trade relations until China stops sending fentanyl. And then we'll do the special operations, and we'll get it from both sides. This is where President Trump went wrong. He focused on trade with China. He didn't focus on the fact that they were buying up our farmland. He didn't focus on the fact that they were killing Americans. He didn't focus on the fact that they were stealing $600 billion in intellectual property.
How come you didn't say anything about that at the time? And even after he was out of office, you just kissed his ass over and over and over again until you ran.
Law enforcement drones in America America are Chinese, and we've got all these little surveillance cells. We need to start focusing on what keeps Americans safe. That hasn't happened in a long time. As your president, I will make sure every American is safe, and we'll do whatever it takes to make that happen.
All right. I want to get to Senator Scott. You're all auditioning for the job as President of the United States. You want to earn these votes. But the world's problems land in the Oval Office. During the presidential debates in the year 2000, neither Al Gore nor George W. Bush was asked about al-Qaeda. Yet, just 1 year later, al-Qaeda's attack on September 11th claimed nearly 3,000 lives. And the farther we get from September 11th, the closer we are to September 10th. Senator Scott, you...
And Gore won, so yeah.
Have no executive branch experience. What has prepared you to protect the nation from a major man-made national security crisis?
One of the things I've had the good fortune of doing is serving on committees in the United States Senate, like
oh, okay, I can handle a tragedy like 9/11 because I sat on a committee.
Also on the Finance Committee and the Banking Committee.
Shut up.
Addressing the issue of fentanyl. I've written the legislation, passed it through the Banking Committee and the Senate that would freeze the assets and sanction the accounts of the Mexican cartels.
Because that worked so well for Iran and Venezuela.
That I was able to get past 23-0 in the polarizing Senate as it is. I've also understood without question the fact that if you look at the details before 9/11, there was information and intelligence that was available that suggested an attack was coming. Having the right intelligence.
And you know what happened? Bush ignored it.
Is key to making sure that we prevent the next 9/11 from ever happening. Having that experience for the last 10 years is really important in getting the job done.
30 seconds to you, Mr. Pence.
Well, I think you asked a question about executive experience. I think it's vitally important. And I stand before you today as a candidate for president because I think this country.
Why does he talk like that?
And you hear the
why
fire
does
on
he
the
talk
stage
with like so always like
fire in all of our voices, and it's because Joe Biden is weak in this country, at home and abroad. This is a time for those of us that have the experience, the tested experience, and a commitment to the conservative agenda that Ronald Reagan brought forward in this party of a strong national defense, standing with our allies, standing up to our enemies, supporting limited government and traditional values, need to step forward.
Understood.
Because frankly, our party does face a time for choosing, as I said at the top of this debate, whether we're going to stand on the foundation of that conservative agenda that Ronald Reagan poured, or whether we're going to follow the siren song of populism unmoored to conservative principles. I'm the most experienced.
When they say populism, though, they actually just mean fascism, because conservatives do not believe in economic populism. So when we're talking about the left, we're talking about economic populism, like healthcare for all, living wages, unions, taxing the rich, shit like that. When they say populism, they don't mean any of that. They don't agree with any economic policy of the left. They mean fascism and like anti-immigrants.
Conservative in this field, and I'm ready to lead America at home and abroad on day one.
Time for choosing to go to a break. Ilya.
We need to go to a commercial break. Reagan built a coalition that lasted decades. Can any of these candidates do the same?
No.
We'll take that up when the
We're going to unleash American energy. We're going to have an all of the above.
Immediate drilling.
Well, look, I think that we do have to run through the courts and get through that administrative state to make sure we're using the natural resources here at home. But here's the other thing that we can do that's easy.
Forever, Mr. Ramaswamy.
And it addresses the national debt as well as brings down prices.
You guys,
Put
we
people
do drill.
back to work. We are using taxpayer money to pay people more to stay at home than to go to work. That is...
He lied again. The same lie. Remember how earlier I was like, they're just going to keep this lie up for decades? He lied about this earlier, and now he's repeating it again. Put people back to work. Put people back to work. That's the answer. First of all, we are energy exporters. So everything they say about energy is a lie. But also, put people back to work. We have the lowest unemployment that we've had in over 50 years. Unemployment is under 3%. So what the fuck are you talking about? They just
that
hate
contributes
workers.
to our supply chain crisis. It contributes to inflation. That's the easiest way to unlock this economy. And here's the other thing. We have to put the Federal Reserve back in its place. This is an agency that has gone rogue. So in January 2026, when I have the opportunity as their next commander-in-chief, we will have a new chairman of the Federal Reserve who places priority on dollar stability. And then most importantly, send packing 75% of the administrative state. Reduce the federal employee headcount by 7.
I hate this tired talking point. Let's reduce the administrative state. You know who actually runs the government? Like, does the work? Is like the administrative state. They're the ones who do the work. It's like a CEO walking into his company and being like, you know what? Just reduce the whole staff. Fire them all. I'll do it. Yeah, we saw Elon Musk try that at Twitter, and that went over just spectacularly.
5%. Rescind 50% of unconstitutional federal regulations that are shackling businesses, both large and small. I've offered a very clear, practical plan to do it. That's how we unleash the economy. That's how we revive the integrity of a 3-branch constitutional republic rather than this technocracy and aristocracy in the administrative state.
Lol.
I think one of the signature accomplishments of our administration was in just a few short years, we achieved energy independence. We became a net exporter of energy for the first time in 75 years. But on day one, Joe Biden declared a war on energy, which was no surprise because when Joe Biden ran for president, he said he was going to end fossil fuels.
No, he didn't, but they'll never stop lying about it.
Ever since. If I'm president of the United States, we're going to open up federal lands. We're going to unleash American energy. We're going to have an all of the above energy strategy. And I have a plan that actually would not only reclaim energy independence, but in 2006, America lost our position as the leading energy producer on Earth. I believe in the next 10 years, with the right policies and experienced leadership in the White House, we can reclaim our role as the leading energy producer on Earth, and that'll grow the American economy for generations to come.
He's like, please clap.
Haley, reaction to that, please.
The only person who's leading an energy state. Could I answer the energy question?
No, Governor Haley.
No. The first thing I'll say
I
is
love how
what
she's
I
like,
saw at the United
no,
Nations
she's done
is
with his ass.
energy security is national security. We need a president that understands we have to partner with our producers and make sure that we have their backs. What you don't need is a president who is against energy independence. Ron DeSantis is against fracking. He's against drilling. He's been against, you did it. He always talks about what happens on day one. You better watch out, because what happens on day two is when you're in trouble. Day two in Florida, you banned fracking. You banned offshore drilling. You did it on federal lands, and you took green subsidies that you didn't have to take.
Governor DeSantis, you were mentioned. You have the right to respond. 30 seconds.
Yeah. I just did a plan out in West Texas for American energy dominance. We're going to choose Midland over Moscow. We're going to choose the Marcellus over the Mullahs, and we're going to choose Bakken over Beijing, and we are going to lower your gas prices. We are going to get that job done because it's important for our national security, it's important for jobs, and that's one of the best ways to drive down inflation.
Governor DeSantis. Governor DeSantis.
So this is the only answer to that, because this is ridiculous.
DeSantis, this question is for you.
Our voters enacted a constitutional amendment.
You banned it before they voted.
Doesn't allow. No, it's not true.
You banned it before they voted, Nikki, and not only that, fracking wasn't. They didn't vote on fracking.
She's totally wrong. They voted it in. That's what we did. Onshore, we do it in Florida. We don't have as much as maybe West Texas, but we do it. But that was a constitutional. So that's just wrong. And let's just get real here. My plan.
What's funny is how they can't even defend things that they did that their constituents liked, because it goes against their like anti-environment agenda. So like, he banned certain things like because of all the ecological destruction in Florida, and voters wanted it. Like all the coral reefs are getting destroyed, like all that shit, and voters want it. And instead of standing proudly on that and being like, yeah, you're damn right I did, because that's what my constituents wanted, and even though I'm this and this and that, I also respect the environment and I care about what my constituents want. He could have done that, but no, of course he's got to shy away from it, because they always have to make being anti, like oil, or anti anything green or environmental, like their whole personality.
get the job done.
You
We are going to
banned
be
it before
energy
the
dominant,
voters
and that's
even
what's going to
voted,
happen.
and the voters didn't even vote on fracking, and you banned
We are
fracking.
moving on with this question for Governor
We're moving on,
DeSantis.
babe.
Governor,
only leader of an
excuse me, we cannot talk over each other. We must respect each other's time. My apologies for that.
I'm ready, Stuart.
Governor DeSantis, this is your question.
I love that he goes, as the only leader of an energy state, I demand someone answer this question, and they just ignore him.
The Biden administration is hell-bent on student loan forgiveness. But you say colleges should be on the hook when graduates cannot pay their debt. How does that address the cost of college? The cost of college itself?
Because the colleges are going to have to make a decision. Do we expand the gender studies department, knowing some of those graduates may not have great learning opportunities?
They always use the
They're
same
going to focus
gender
on the things
studies
that really
routine.
matter. They're going to make different choices.
Literally,
They're going to try
every
to
time.
graduate people
Every
in 4 years.
time.
I also just want to come back to something Dana asked last segment about 9/11, because I was just at the 9/11 memorial with the families. My wife and I were invited. It's very touching to be there, and it affected my life because I ended up joining the military as a result of that. I had been a blue-collar kid, minimum wage in Dunedin, Florida. I ended up getting through Yale and Harvard Law School and somehow came out more conservative than when I went in, and that is not easy to do. Had a lot of opportunities to make money, but I wanted to serve, and I'll never forget coming back
You
on the
wanted
plane
to
from
serve
Iraq,
'cause you wanted it on your
landing in
resume,
Coronado,
bro.
California, North Island,
let's
and
just be
feeling
real
that
about
breeze off the
that.
Pacific Ocean and say, you know what? I am lucky to have been born an American, and I think being able to serve, and I'll be the first president elected since 1988 who's actually served overseas in a war. I think that's going to help me as commander-in-chief to know how you see these issues and understand that there are real lives at stake for people that wear the uniform.
And we know that Governor Haley's husband is serving right now as well, and we thank him for that. Senator Scott, the national debt has nearly doubled in your time in office. The approval rate for Congress is at a mere 19%. If this were a business, you'd probably all be fired in Washington, but you're here tonight looking for a promotion. In 2013, Governor Haley hired you for the Senate. I'd like you to tell her why you should be promoted to CEO of the nation instead of her.
Right, because in politics, all these people just fail up. They just fail up. No one likes you guys. No one thinks you're doing a good job, and yet you all want to be president.
Certainly. One of the things I'd say is if you look at our national debt of $33 trillion, I would love to have an opportunity to have this country pass a balanced budget amendment. That would constrain the spending in Washington in the same fashion that it does in every state in our nation, number one. Number two, if you want to actually reduce our national debt, you have to grow our economy. In order to grow our economy, you need to create about 10 million jobs to grow our economy at 5%. You can do that in 3 specific sectors. Number one, the energy sector. We could create between 3 and 3.5 million jobs if we unleashed all of our energy resources. America is we're the richest country if you combine coal, gas, and oil. Why not unleash all of our resources? Number two, we've lost 100,000 factories. 100,000 factories in the last 25 years. If we continued on my Made in America plan, we could bring jobs back to America in a similar fashion that we did when I wrote the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act.
Why are you bringing that up
Actually lowered
again?
the corporate tax from 35% to 21%.
Why are you bringing that up again? That's so
Reshored or
embarrassing.
repatriated $1.7 trillion. We brought the unemployment rates for African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians to the lowest level in the history of the country, and a 70-year low for women.
Governor Haley, would you think you would deserve the
first of
promotion
all,
over
I think,
him?
look, I appreciate Tim. We've known each other a long time, but he's been there 12 years and he hasn't done any of that. He hasn't. They've only given 4 budgets on time in 40 years. He was part of that. He increased the national debt. He voted for the spending.
The biggest tax cut for the rich ever? How are you not impressed?
Look at everything that's happened. 12 years. Where have you been? Where
I
have
voted
you
no
been,
on all.
Tim?
I voted on
12
most of
years.
those things.
We've
I have
waited
voted
and
most-
nothing has
Here,
happened.
They're just screaming over each other.
Thing that I just find interesting.
Ron, let me finish
All
this
these
first.
guys have said
Here's the
things,
fact.
and I appreciate a lot of the things they're saying.
Nikki
I'm
Haley-
the only one up here who's gotten in the big fights. And
No,
has
you
delivered
haven't.
big
You won't even
victories for the
stand up
people
to
of
Donald
Florida.
Trump.
And
No,
that's
you
what it's all
haven't.
about. You
He
can
won't
always
even
stop
go on
when it
unfriendly
gets hot
media.
in there. When they're shooting arrows at you, are you going to be stand up for parents' rights, to keep the state free? Are you going to be able to do all those
Bro, you
things?
can't
And in the
even
state of
stand up to
Florida,
Trump, like, you're
because of our
pathetic.
success, the Democratic Party lies in ruins. We have won the big fights. We have turned our state into a Republican state. People respond to leadership. I've done it while others have talked about it.
CEO, we actually have a CEO in the White House. Which is what I think we need.
How about we have a CEO in the White House? No, first of all, we already had a CEO in the White House and it was a disaster. Second of all, no. We don't need you, who was like a charlatan scam businessman, to be there. No, we need someone who actually knows how to govern.
We need a zero-based budgeting. That's the way businesses are actually
He's
run.
so absurd.
Start with zero as the baseline for the budget.
He's so
and then see
absurd.
what's actually necessary. There isn't a blue state or a red state in this union that does it. The federal government doesn't do it. But successful companies, incling the ones that I've built as a CEO, will do it. And I think we need a CEO in the White House to get that done.
Governor Burgum runs a state that way.
Yeah,
Yes,
tech
go
questions,
ahead.
you didn't ask the only guy that's been in tech. You have energy questions, you don't ask anything. But I'm just going to say right now, when you say nobody else has done it, the energy plans that have all been
He's
announced
like,
in the last
better
month by these other folks on stage,
man.
we're already doing it in North Dakota. The border plans they're already talking about, we've got troops down at the border flying helicopter missions from North Dakota, from San Diego to the Gulf Coast, trying to stop transnational criminal organizations from inflicting the invasion and the mass casualties in our state. And on the energy policy, we're already doing it. It's not saying when nobody else done the big fights, North Dakota was leading the charge. We won the battle to get the Biden administration, who was ignoring the law. They were the first administration since Truman that wasn't holding the
He's just making shit up.
sales, and we won that
He's
in federal
just making
court.
shit up.
Lotus, we
Oh,
won
my
that in
gosh.
federal court. We're fighting the Biden administration on 20 fronts. To say that nobody's fighting the big fights, just look at the record of what we're doing right now.
Look at the record in my
Energy,
little
economy,
state that
national
only has
security,
like a
I've been
million,
talking about it
less
since
than a
day
million
one,
people in it.
and now finally good. We're having the conversation about it, but we've got the answer.
This guy
North
is in the
Dakota.
wrong
Governor Burgum,
decade.
let's talk big government. This question's for you. Big government keeps getting bigger.
I hate big government.
1/5 of all new jobs this year
But
have been
I
created
love
by the government.
making it
Governor Burgum,
bigger
you
under my
say
watch.
You want to shrink the size of government. But it has been a century since any president has done that. Why would you be any different?
Well, because we've done it in North Dakota. When I took office, we shrunk the
I
state
hate to break
budget,
this to you,
general
but
fund
the
by 27%
federal
in the first
government
4
is
months I
not
was in office,
North
and all the
Dakota.
trains stopped running on time. Why? Because you had a business leader that was actually there. Inside of every government job,
They always-
there's 10 or 20% of mind-numbing, soul-sucking work that even the state and federal employees don't want to do, and you can engineer that work out of the job. That would free up right there 20% of 2 million civilian employees. And by the way, we've got 10 million
They
jobs
always
open.
say,
They'd
"Oh,
have
we need a
plenty to do, and
businessman,
they could
we
be
need a CEO."
and generating taxes instead of being paid by taxes.
Nobody
This is totally possible to
learns
do it if you have somebody that
anything
understands.
ever.
Because having worked
I
in
just
technology
don't
for 30 years,
understand,
everything
like,
we had
why
to do was
don't
to be better,
people ever
faster, and cheaper the next
learn?
day.
Like, these people are
That's what we can do in
liars.
government. That's what we're doing in North Dakota.
All right. Governor DeSantis. I want to ask you about something that I think is on a lot of Republicans' minds. This election could come down to less than 50,000 votes in 3 states.
As it
Abortion was
usually
on the
does.
ballot in 6 states in 2022. Republicans lost all of them. Next year, abortion will likely be on the ballot in Arizona. That is a must-win state. Governor DeSantis, how are you going to win over independent, pro-choice voters in Arizona?
Same way we did in Florida. We won the greatest Republican victory in a governor's race in the history of the state, over 1.5 million votes. We were winning places like Miami-Dade County, Palm Beach.
A lot of that had to do with the fact that the Democratic Party is already not very good in Florida, and you're like mad voter
pro-lifers are to
suppressor.
blame for midterm defeats. I think there's other reasons for that. The former president, he's missing in action tonight.
Maybe
He's
stop
had a lot
telling
to say
people
about
not to
that.
mail in
he
their
should be
votes.
here explaining his comments to try to say that pro-life protections are somehow a terrible thing. I want him to look into the eyes and tell people who've been fighting this fight for a long time. My wife and I earlier today were at the gravesite of President and Mrs. Reagan, and I noticed that there was a quote where it says, "Every single person has purpose and worth." We're better off when everybody counts. And I think we should stand for what we believe in.
They're pro-life
I think we
until
should
the baby
hold
is
the
born.
Democrats
Then
accountable
they don't care.
for their extremism, supporting abortion all the way up until the moment of birth. That is infanticide, and that is wrong.
Infanticide? Yeah. Infanticide. That's a separate thing. That's when a baby is already born and they get killed. This lie that people are having abortions up until and post-birth, first of all, yeah, infanticide and like homicide are crimes. People are not having abortions all the way up until birth. The only reason why they keep lying about this is because their position is so radical. And how do you defend a really radical position? by lying and saying the other position is more radical. But it's a lie, like everything else they say.
Let me ask Governor Christie. Governor Christie, do you think that Republicans...
Yes, I will.
Okay, Governor Christie, do you think that Republicans can do that in Arizona if this referendum is on the ballot there?
Yeah, because I did it in New Jersey, Dana. You know, it's...
Then why
He hasn't
are
even
these
been
other
in
states
office for
losing?
years.
Well, because they don't have leaders in those states who are leading the fight the way it should be led.
No.
And the fact is, look, I was the governor here of the only blue state that's represented up here. This is where the fight is really tough for Republicans. And those are the states that we're going to have to try to win if we're going to win the White House back. And what we did was 14 times, Dana, in 8 years, I vetoed Planned Parenthood funding. 14 times. No one else gets it that much.
I've taken away health care from people. Isn't it amazing? Something to be so proud of.
But I also believe in states' rights. And I think we fought hard against Roe versus Wade for decades to say that states should make these decisions. So we're going to have those fights in the states. But what you need is a leader who can talk to people and make them understand that if you're pro-life, you have to be pro-life for the entire life. Not just the 9 months in the womb.
They're taking that
And we
talking
talked a lot
point from
about
the
fentanyl
left,
tonight,
and then
we
they
haven't spoken
don't
one
believe in
moment about
actually taking
treatment.
care of them.
But we need to make sure that for the drug-addicted 16-year-old on the floor of the county lockup, her life is precious too. And we need to be providing treatment to cure this as a disease that it is. If you're pro-life, you gotta
guys
be
don't
pro-life
believe
for the
in
entire life.
treatment.
We start talking like that, they're gonna do what I did in the blue state, which was get reelected with 61% of the vote and won 70% of independents and 51% of Latinos because I told them the truth from my heart.
Thank you.
Vice President Pence, the latest Univision poll found that 73% of Latino voters think the Republican Party doesn't care about or is being hostile toward them, the Hispanic community. Only Governor DeSantis has translated his campaign into Spanish. How will you reach out to Latino voters?
Well, I promise you that we're going to continue to build bridges to every community in this country.
I haven't,
And I'm
but I will
incredibly
at some
proud
point
of
into
that
the future.
Tax cut and tax reform bill. I worked on the bill to help get that bill passed into law.
Lol.
Largest tax cut in American history. We saw literally the
just-
lowest unemployment
the-
ever recorded.
the
for
fact that
Hispanic
they allow them
Americans.
to continue
Lowest
to lie about
unemployment
that
ever
is
recorded for
amazing.
African Americans. 50-year low for women. So I think the President of the United States needs to be a champion for the American dream for every American. It begins with the unborn and the aged and the infirm. And it begins with every ethnic group in this country. And I promise you, if I'm President of the United States, I'll be a champion. I'll be
So
a champion for the
why doesn't
American
somebody
dream
give him a
for
follow-up question
Hispanic
on why they were so
Americans and for
terrible
every
to
American. So
Latinos
help me
during the
God.
Trump
Senator
administration?
Scott, reaction?
Yes, there's no doubt that if you lead by example, it's the best way to get the job done.
Tim
If you look at my
Scott
office-
talked way too much in this debate for someone who has zero chance. Zero chance. Well, I guess Doug Burgum, he's the worst. He shouldn't have gotten any. Doug Burgum should not even have been on the stage, okay? But as far as the other ones, like, Tim Scott just, like, talked and talked. It was almost like Tim Scott was disappointed with himself in the last debate, so he, like, took notes on everything he was going to say this time and just interrupted everybody.
in the Senate.
He even
My
shut up
chief of
Ramaswamy.
staff is the only Hispanic female chief of staff in the Senate. I hired her.
Why do you
because she was the
care? I thought you
best,
guys hated
highest
identity
qualified person
politics.
we have. What we need are leaders who lead by example. And I will simply say, I would love to finish my conversation with Nikki as it relates to the job that needs to get done.
Oh,
Nikki
no.
offered a 10% gas tax increase in South Carolina. Talk about someone who has never seen a federal dollar she doesn't like. 10 cents on the
None of
gallon
you have
in
ever seen
South
federal
Carolina.
dollars that you
As
didn't
the
like.
UN
None of you.
ambassador, you literally
Bring it,
put
Tim.
$50,000 on curtains in a $15 million subsidized location. Next.
You got bad information. First of all, I fought the gas tax in South Carolina multiple times against the establishment.
Just go to YouTube.
Against the
You-
establishment.
just go to
And
Go to
you know what the
YouTube, that's his
was?
source.
When they wouldn't pass the gas tax, the establishment and the companies wanted me to do it so much that I said the only
And that's not to say that YouTube isn't a good source necessarily, but like you're in government. Don't you have like direct access?
way I will
Here's
pass
what you
it
have to
if
do.
you
All
will
you
give
have
us
to do.
three.
All you have
Also,
to
you know he's desperate because why is he bringing up curtains? That like she used curtains at the UN house. Like, This is
Nikki
desperate.
Haley on YouTube.
Yes.
If you will give me 3 times the deduction in income tax, then I will look at your gas
So you
tax,
said
which
yes,
is why it didn't
you would
happen.
pass.
Secondly,
Exactly, Ron.
secondly, on the 50 million.
Here's a nice part.
Secondly, on the curtains, do your
Yes.
homework, Tim, because Obama bought those curtains.
Did you send them back?
It's in the press.
Did you send them
Did
back?
you
It's the
send them
State
back? Why?
Department.
Did you send them
Did
back?
you send them back? You're the one that works in Congress.
Oh my gosh.
You get it
You
done.
hung them on your curtains.
They were there before I even showed up at the...
This is so embarrassing that they're arguing over this. It's embarrassing that he brought it up and then said, why didn't you send them back? Why would she? This is so dumb.
Presidents, you are scrapping. You are scrapping.
Yeah, that's true. He is scrapping.
I cut taxes. I loaded up our
You wanted a gas tax increase, and then you
Ladies and gentlemen, we do not intend to go ahead like this. In fact, we're about to take a commercial break. We'll have more of the second Republican debate live from the...
Pray with me real quick.
So now's your chance to try Lumi.
With inflation at 9%.
Thankfully, this is the end.
Welcome back to the final minutes. I could
It's
go another
exhausting.
hour, but we only have a few minutes. And candidates, it's now obvious that if you all stay in the race, former President Donald Trump wins the nomination. None of you have indicated that you're dropping out. So, which one of you on stage tonight should be voted off the island?
They should have answered
Please
this.
use
They
your
should have.
marker to write your choice on the notepad in front of you. 15 seconds, starting now. Of the people on the stage, who should be? I'm
I'll decline
absolutely
to do that
serious.
with all due respect. I mean, we're here, like, you know, we're happy to debate, but I think that that's disrespectful to my fellow competitors.
Nobody wants to participate.
Let's do some questions.
Pretending all of a sudden, playing civility politics to not have to answer.
Let me ask you this.
If I may.
Let me ask you
No,
something.
you
Let me-
may
if you won't
not.
answer that question. Let me ask you this one.
Yeah.
Vivek
What is your
rhymes with
mathematical
cake.
path,
Yes.
Governor DeSantis, in order to try to beat President Trump, who has a commanding and enduring lead in this race?
So polls don't elect presidents. Voters elect presidents.
Right.
And we're going to take the case of the people in these early states. We're going to do it in a state-by-state direction. And why? Because as Reagan said in his day, this is our time for choosing. We are not getting a mulligan on the 2024 election. Republicans have lost 3 straight elections in a row. We were supposed to have a red wave with inflation at 9%. It crashed and burned. Not in Florida, it didn't. We delivered it in Florida. And so
Yeah, but you have a problem, sir, because you don't admit that Trump lost.
choose right. We've got to win, and we need somebody that's going to be able to serve 2 terms. So in January of 2023, they'll be able to address the nation saying, we turned the economy around, we secured the border, and we fended off the threat from communist China. As your president, I will get that
2027?
job done.
Governor Christie.
Every single time he's done talking, he does that fucking awkward smile.
Governor Christie, I believe, excuse me, Governor Christie, I believe I did see you write something on the card. Who was it?
No, but I'll certainly tell you.
Go.
Okay.
Yeah. Look, I think I've been the only one on this stage who's been clear about this. I vote Donald Trump off the island right now. And the reason I vote him off the island...
He's not here. That's a...
Any of the people on the stage
you know
off
what?
the...
Every
That's
person
a
on this stage has shown the
bullshit
respect for Republican voters to come here, to express their views honestly, candidly, and directly, and to take your questions honestly. I have respect for every man and woman on this stage because they've done it. Vivek, put your hand down for a second, would you? I still got time, dude. So
That was
chill out.
funny. He's like, can you just shut the fuck up?
This guy has not only divided our party, he's divided families all over this country. He's divided friends all over this country. I've spoken to people, and I know everyone else has, who have sat at Thanksgiving dinner or at a birthday party and can't have a conversation anymore if they disagree with Donald Trump.
Governor
He needs to
and
be voted
candidates.
off the island, and he needs to be taken out of this
Can we get
process.
Vivek 15 seconds? Vivek.
Vivek doesn't need any more time. He hasn't shut the
I
fuck
have
up
a
the whole
different view on
time.
this. I think Trump was an excellent president, but the America First agenda does not.
That is your closing statement? That was what you were so interested in responding to, that you really needed to respond to. That was it. I know, Governor. I thought Trump was amazing. He was an excellent president. Then why are you running? Okay.
Belong to one man. It does not belong to Donald Trump. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to you.
You guys aren't
the people of this country. And the question is, who's going to unite this country and take
certainly
the
not
America First
you. You're a
agenda
fucking
to the next
fascist.
level? When we
Oh, that cut off. That was the end. I thought that it was glitching because even the recording was so tired of hearing him talk. But I guess that I guess that was the end. Good. That was exhausting, but I think important because you got to know how to tell when these people are lying. And we should pay attention. We should always pay attention to what they're doing. See you guys later.